Warzone hasn't been doing very well recently. Despite the fact that the game has had some pretty decent updates from Raven Software, people just aren't interested in Caldera and aren't interested in the World War II setting. So it's time to talk about Warzone 2, because this will be the revitalizing shot for the franchise and realistically will be the foundation for this battle royale going forward for the next couple of years. And I'm going to dive into the must-haves for Warzone 2, and I'd really love to hear your opinion on this in the comment section down below, so let me know what you're thinking. And if you do go on to enjoy these suggestions, drop a like and subscribe, it helps the channel massively. So let's talk must-haves for Warzone 2. And the first one for me is something that doesn't get enough attention in the Warzone space because the majority of players play on PC. And that has to be just how woeful this game is on console and how unacceptable Warzone has been generally on console. So for Warzone 2, it's an absolute necessity that console players finally receive some prioritization. They need their game to look good, they need the same features like an FOV slider, and they absolutely must have a 120Hz refresh rate version of the game. Now look, I understand why Warzone has struggled on consoles, considering that the game was never designed to really last this long on super old hardware like the PS4 and Xbox One. But there was an expectation that with the PS5, Series X, and even the Series S that we would see an upgrade or next generation version of Warzone for these consoles, and that's never come to pass, and it is going to happen for Warzone 2, but it's an absolute necessity that they get it right. Now, one of the biggest issues with Warzone generally is what's known as render resolution scaling. And I've explained this to many people before, but basically Warzone has super aggressive render resolution scaling. And what this is that Warzone will lower the resolution of your game in real time in order to try and maintain a stable frame rate. And this is something that simply cannot exist on the next generation version. And the reason why is because it makes your game super blurry. Now, if you've ever watched a streamer on Twitch or YouTube and wondered why their PC version of the game looks so crisp, that's because the PC versions by default never have this on. So it's really important that the next generation consoles especially get what they deserve really with the power and horsepower that they offer as consoles. An FOV slider, 120Hz, decent looking visuals that doesn't have an aggressive dynamic resolution scaling. And there's really no reason why they can't achieve this. The IWA engine and the Warzone engine isn't exactly a heavy engine in the grand scheme of things, and achieving competitive frame rates around the 120Hz refresh rate is definitely possible. The next big thing that we absolutely have to talk about is audio, because audio is one of the weakest parts of Call of Duty Warzone, and allegedly we're going to see an experimental audio change in Season 3 of current Warzone. And Warzone 2 is going to utilize this engine, which is allegedly an upgraded version for IWA to improve positional audio in Call of Duty Warzone, which hopefully means distance audio, like hearing gunshots far or close away will be better, and hearing footsteps will be substantially better. Now, if you've ever played a game like PUBG or Squad or any other FPS on PC generally, you'll notice that the audio in these games is fantastic. The audio in PUBG especially is some of the best in the industry. You can hear how far away people are, you can very easily identify gunshots, and Hunt Showdown is a really good example of a game which has an intricate audio system that makes positional audio really easy to understand. I think it's an absolute necessity that Warzone's audio engine gets a massive upgrade, because it almost feels as though it's not in line with the modern standards of 2022 and very far behind other game engines generally. Moving on is Ricochet AntiCheat. Now, Ricochet has been doing a reasonable job, and I will say that the number of cheaters I encountered went from multiple per week and multiple per day down to 1 or 2 very rarely. And I know it's different for different people, and some people encounter more and less, but generally it's starting to do its job, and it's starting to really tap into the issue of cheating, most recently actually targeting a bunch of hardware spoofers which allowed them to circumvent the anti-cheat and knocking all of those accounts offline. Now, in Warzone 2, they have the opportunity to really integrate the new Ricochet anti-cheat in a far more effective way. They've effectively had to bolt this anti-cheat onto Warzone, but in terms of Warzone 2, they could add more variables, more things, more understanding that the anti-cheat can utilize statistics and analysis that will allow them to more easily identify cheaters. And this is something that I think is really a necessity with Warzone 2. Now, a lot of console players have just flat out stopped playing Warzone because they encountered so many cheaters before Ricochet that quite frankly they don't even care what happens after Ricochet. And that's entirely understandable. They spent so long not doing anything about cheating that there was really no trust in the brand anymore, and I don't blame people who left the game because of the cheating situation. Now hopefully we can see more of an improvement in Warzone 2 as this anti-cheat gets an opportunity to really be coded from the ground up, really be integrated into Warzone 2 from the very beginning, and use lots of data that it's collected from the original Warzone to bring into Warzone 2 and how it can understand how to do things better. The last big thing for me, or last two big things, are balance. And I mean this both in terms of the in-game balance, but also in terms of how the game is managed and run. Now, let's talk about the second one, because that's a little bit more complicated. And what I mean by this is balancing the game in a way that makes sense. And if you look at the most recent April Fool's playlist, this is something that really screams to me as the future of Warzone. In Warzone, there needs to be three distinct experiences. A casual mode for casual players who just want to play the OG version of Warzone without any wackiness and just enjoy themselves. A ranked playlist which has certain banned items within the playlist and a more competitive styling. Something that would get rid of like stun grenades, dead silence, that kind of thing. And then finally, an LTM playlist is really critical to this game. Limited time modes that are just wacky, different, and a bit of fun. Imagine Warzone where Krampus was an LTM and not just shoved down your throat manually in the game. Or Zombie Royale gets rotated into the game every 2 to 3 weeks. Or the April Fool's mode is something that's rotated in. And there are various other LTMs and ideas that they could mess with. You know, having helicopters versus jets, or planes, or tanks, or whatever they wanted in a random LTM playlist that updated weekly with different flavors of Warzone that really embrace the sandbox environment of the game. That would be really good fun, and something that I think would really liven up Warzone and give us those wow moments back from the early days of Verdansk especially. In-game balance matters too, things like stun grenades which have plagued Warzone from day one, stupid metas like fire shotguns that just ultimately annoy everybody in the grand scheme of things, and just balancing the game accordingly, and also not having 700 weapons. You know, I really miss the days of Warzone where adding a new gun actually felt relevant and felt like something exciting. Whereas now it's like, oh yeah, here's one more weapon, which is just like the other 800 we have. So much so that I generally just don't really care very much about what they add to Warzone. And I guess actually the final thing is something that we do need to talk about. The map for Warzone. The map for Warzone is super essential in Warzone 2. Now, I don't actually dislike Caldera, much like most people. I do think the World War II setting is really boring. I do think that the middle of the map around Peak is really badly designed, but in terms of the actual building design and point of interest design, it's actually really well done. Every building has multiple entryways, it's very difficult to camp buildings, you have to work together to defend them, you have to work together to attack them, there are multiple jump ups, multiple avenues. It's a more aggressive version of Warzone. Whereas Verdansk was like, oh yeah, this building can only be accessed by one ladder, and if somebody's camping there, you're all dead. And that's something that I really disliked about Verdansk generally. So there's a really good opportunity here to kind of merge the really interesting, modern, and relatable setting of Verdansk into the design philosophy of something like Caldera, and create a map that is both fun, aggressive, intelligent to play with, but also a map that's modern and enjoyable. Now again, I'd love to hear all your thoughts on this, folks, so feel free to drop me a comment down below, and of course like and subscribe if you enjoyed everything you saw here today. It does support the channel, and we're on the road to 100k. As always, folks, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you again in the next one.